Hi, I'm Daniel Peterson. I am a professor at Mississippi State University. I am also the director of the Institute for Genomics, Biocomputing, and Biotechnology at Mississippi State. As you may see on your agenda, I was supposed to be with you in Riga discussing conifers and conifer genomics. Unfortunately, I ran into a problem. Um, I I made the flight from Mississippi to Atlanta, got to the Atlanta airport and had a 9-hour layover, and then went up to the counter to get my boarding pass to go to Amsterdam and then to Riga. And when they looked at my passport, they said, your passport expires in mid-January 2014, which I didn't know was going to be a problem, except in order to travel to Latvia and many of the EU countries, you need to have at least 3 months validity. Your passport has to be valid for at least 3 months after your intended departure date from that country. And mine only had 2.5 months. So essentially, they turned me away at the gate. And as the next day was Sunday, and the embassies were closed, it was not possible for me to get a passport in time to come to the meeting. And I am truly sorry that I cannot attend the meeting. And I sincerely apologize for not looking into the matter more closely before undergoing all of that. Nonetheless, I have recorded both of my lectures. I hope that you find them informative and useful. The first is a discussion of gymnosperms and conifers and some of the interesting plants that you may not have heard of. The second is a discussion of physical mapping techniques, which is a more traditional genomics subject. But even though I can't be there with you, I hope that you have a wonderful time. I hope that you learn lots of interesting things. And ultimately, I hope to see you soon. Thanks a lot. As the title of my seminar indicates, I'm going to talk to you today about gymnosperms, a fascinating group of plants that includes the conifers, cycads, ginkgos, and neophytes. The conifers are a group of tremendous economic and ecological value, but are highly understudied considering their value to humankind. The other gymnosperms, while perhaps not as economically valuable, are even more neglected and underappreciated. Through this seminar, I'd like to introduce you to some of these ancient underdogs. Why do I find gymnosperms so interesting? Well, they are the longest living single organisms on the planet. When I say single organisms, I'm referring to organisms that are not simply clones of long-dead ancestors, but are entities in and of themselves. Some gymnosperms can reach ages exceeding 5,000 years. In the lower left corner is a photo of Methuselah, once considered the oldest living being on the earth. It is now considered the second oldest being. An older, yet unnamed, bristlecone pine was originally cored in the 1950s by Edmund Schulman. Unfortunately, Schulman died before he had time to count the rings. Tom Harlan counted the rings from the old core in about 2012 and determined that this tree is now 5,062 years old. Gymnosperms are also the most massive and tallest single organisms on Earth. Next to the photo of Methuselah is General Sherman, a giant sequoia with a mass greater than any other non-clonal organism on the planet. The tallest living organism is Hyperion, a coast redwood, with a height of 115 meters. The last photo is that of a non-conifer gymnosperm known as Welwitschia mirabilis. This extremely tough species lives in the Namibian desert in a climate where few other creatures can survive. Just look at the desolate landscape behind this plant. Each Welwitschia sends out 2 leathery leaves which grow across the desert sand. Over time, the leaves get tattered by the wind, giving the plant a multi-leaf appearance. Welwitschia can live to be over 1,000 years old. So where do gymnosperms fit into the overall picture of living things? Well, recently, Kristen Hutz et al. Reorganized all vascular plants into a single class called Equisitopsida. This includes three subclasses which we refer to as bryophytes, one subclass of lycopodiophytes, which includes the club mosses, the spike mosses, and the quillworts, four subclasses of ferns, and five subclasses of seed plants. Four of the subclasses of seed plants have seeds that are found on bracts or scales. These are the gymnosperms, a word that literally means naked seed. The fifth seed plant subclass, Magnoleidae, contains all the flowering plants, or angiosperms. Note that all seed plants are derived from a common ancestor. The divergence of angiosperms from gymnosperms occurred roughly 300 million years ago in the Carboniferous period of the Paleozoic era. Now let's focus on extant seed plants. As mentioned earlier, there are four subclasses of gymnosperms. These are the cycadidae, or cycads, the Ginkgoidae, or ginkgos, the netidae, or netophytes, and the Pinidae, or conifers. Though there is some lingering debate about the relationships of gymnosperms to each other and to angiosperms, which I will discuss later, molecular evidence strongly suggests that the gymnosperms are all more closely related to each other than they are to the angiosperms. They do indeed appear to be monophyletic, although as you will see, they can be quite variable in appearance. As indicated by the green regions on the world diagram to the right, gymnosperms are found in many parts of the world, and indeed they are among the most conspicuous organisms in the northern hemisphere, dominating many of the arboreal and temperate forests of Europe, North America, and Asia. Most of the gymnosperms in the northern continents are conifers, the Pinidae. The ancestor of angiosperms appears to be a now extinct group of gymnosperms. Most of our food comes from angiosperms and animals fed on angiosperms. In the northern hemisphere, coniferous gymnosperms are the primary source of wood and wood fibers. In my adopted home state of Mississippi, loblolly pine is the most economically important crop plant. Most of the trees harvested in the U.S. South are grown on plantations rather than taken from forests. I know that spruces and pines are key to the economies and ecosystems of all the EU nations represented at this workshop. I've heard some people claim that angiosperms are more successful than gymnosperms. This may or may not be true. Certainly the number of angiosperm species eclipses that of extant gymnosperms. There are more than 250,000 angiosperm species, while the number of gymnosperm species is only about 1,000. However, coniferous gymnosperms dominate many of the ecosystems in which they are found. Moreover, species number is not the only measure of success. Humans are arguably a successful group of organisms, although we come from the great apes, 7 extant species, all of which are endangered except humans. Though humans have aided the demise of their closest relatives, the great apes as a whole have been on their way toward the exit since before the rise of humans. I like to use a musical analogy when comparing angiosperms and gymnosperms. Angiosperms are evolving in cut time, meaning very quickly, while gymnosperms are evolving in three-quarter time, an evolutionary waltz, if you will. If you consider genome size, there is a 2,000-fold range in DNA content in angiosperms, while gymnosperms exhibit only a 16-fold range in 1C DNA content. Polyploidy is very common in angiosperms, while it is rare in gymnosperms. At least recent polyploidy is rare in gymnosperms. Chromosome numbers are highly variable in angiosperms, whereas nearly all gymnosperms have 11 or 12 chromosomes in their gametes. Flowering plants have relatively short lifespans compared to those of gymnosperms, and the amount of morphological diversity among angiosperms is considerable when compared to gymnosperms. Many angiosperms have evolved complex relationships with animals, which they utilize to facilitate pollination. Most gymnosperms are wind-pollinated. Angiosperms are fast-living, fast-adapting specialists. Gymnosperms, in contrast, are tough, slow-living generalists. So now let's focus in on the gymnosperms. In fact, let's start with the best-known gymnosperms, the conifers, members of the Pinidae. The Pinidae are divided into three orders: the Pinales, the Araucariales, and the Cupressalis. The Pinales contains a single family, the Pinaceae, and it is the Pinaceae that have been the focus of 99% of the research on gymnosperms. With a few exceptions, almost all the major wood-producing conifers are members of the Pinaceae. There are between 200 and 250 species of Pinaceae, and they include those conifers which we know the best. Specifically, I am referring to the pines and the spruces, and to a lesser extent, the larches, the firs, the cedars, the hemlocks, and Douglas fir. The pines are found throughout much of the northern hemisphere. In North America, loblolly pine is of particular importance. In Europe, Scots pine and maritime pine are key pine species. The loblolly pine genome is in an advanced stage of sequencing and assembly, while Scots pine and maritime pine are foci of the Procogen program. Spruces are dominant throughout the colder climates. The first conifer genome sequence was generated for Norway spruce, a tree of tremendous importance to Europe and one of the key species studied by Procogen. White spruce, of particular value in Canada, also has advanced genomics resources. I also show in this slide blue spruce, simply because it is the state tree of Colorado, the state in which I was born and spent my childhood. This slide shows examples of firs, larches, cedars, hemlocks, and Douglas fir. These are the remaining groups of Pinaceae. So when one thinks about conifer genetics and genomics, they are largely talking about Pinaceae trees, specifically pines and spruces. But the Pinaceae is only one of 6 conifer groups. Now let's talk about the other conifers, the freaks, geeks, outcasts, and loners. The largest and best known of non-Pinaceae conifers is the Cupressaceae. This family contains 29 genera and is the most widely distributed gymnosperm family. The Cupressaceae includes the junipers, the redwoods, the cypresses, bald cypress, and the red cedars and white cedars. Perhaps my favorite tree species is Taxodium distichum, the bald cypress. This plant, found in the southern U.S. and northern Mexico, can grow directly out of swamps. Indeed, the trees may spend most of their 1,000+ years in standing water. Bald cypress is deciduous. Its needles turn color in the fall and are replaced by new green needles in the spring. The needles themselves are soft and, unless you notice the cones, you might think the bald cypress is an angiosperm. As a complement to the work my lab was doing on loblolly pine, we decided to build a back library for bald cypress. This 7 genome equivalent library is something I hope to use in sequencing the genome of bald cypress. The junipers are truly supertrees, as they are widely distributed and found in many of the driest, harshest regions in the world. Of course, the redwoods are amazing due to their size and grandeur. The cypresses are beautiful trees, sacred to Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, the moon, and young maidens. The next conifer family is the Taxaceae, trees commonly referred to as yews. The Taxaceae has 6 genera and 28 species. Note that some yews have scales that develop into fleshy arils, giving them the appearance of berries. The Podocarpaceae contains roughly 156 species in 19 genera. Podocarps are primarily found in the southern hemisphere, most notably the South Pacific. Note that some podocarps have fleshy scales similar to those of yews. Of note, the Podocarpaceae contains the only known parasitic gymnosperm, Parasitaxis usta, which happens to parasitize another podocarp. The Pitiaceae contains a single species, Pitias verticillata. A native of Japan, this conifer was once grouped in the Cupressaceae. The Araucariaceae is highly localized in its distribution. The family contains 3 genera, Araucaria, Agathis, and Wollemia. As shown in the figure, the vast majority of species diversity in the family is found on the tiny island of New Caledonia, where there are 13 endemic Araucariaceae species. God, that's hard to say. One species, the monkey puzzle tree, is found in South America. Araucaria araucana, the monkey puzzle tree, is endemic to certain regions of Chile and Argentina. The tree's needles are triangular and quite spiny and sharp. It is often described as being reptilian in appearance. The monkey puzzle tree has become a popular ornamental. I first encountered one at a seaside resort in Belize. The genus Wollemia contains a single extant species, Wollemia nobilis. Wollemia was only known from fossil records until Wollemia nobilis was discovered growing in Australia in 1994. Let's all sing the conifer song. Araucariaceae, Sciatopediaceae, Podocarpaceae, Cupressaceae, don't forget Taxaceae or the Pinaceae. Those are the Pinidae, the conifers we love to see, yeah. Those are the Pinidae, the conifers we love to see, yeah. Okay, finally we get to the fun stuff, the non-coniferous gymnosperms. Except for the cycadales, in which there are 2 families, the Cycadae and the Zamiaceae, all the other orders contain 1 family each. The remaining families are the Ginkgoaceae, the Welwitchiaceae, the Nataceae, and the Ephedraceae. The entire subclass, Ginkgoidae, contains but 1 species, Ginkgo biloba. All other Ginkgo species have long been extinct. Endemic to China, Ginkgo biloba may well be extinct in the wild. The seeds have a fleshy outer layer known as the sarcotesta, which, while giving the seeds an attractive fruit-like appearance, contains butyric acid, a rancid-smelling compound. Because ginkgos are dioecious, most ginkgos seen in public places are male trees, as they do not produce foul-smelling seeds. Ginkgos have motile sperm and are the only gymnosperms that have dimorphic sex chromosomes. Where have all the ginkgos gone? Long time passing. Where have all the ginkgos gone? Long time ago. Where have all the ginkgos gone? Gone to fossils, everyone, except for Ginkgo biloba. When will they Ginkgos are deciduous with leaves that turn from green to bright yellow. They are extremely popular ornamentals throughout the world. The Mississippi State University campus, for example, has almost as many ginkgo trees as it does native bald cypresses. Because ginkgos are highly resistant to pollution, they are often grown in large cities. Who knows? The age of the ginkgo may be yet to come. The image on the left shows the seeds of a female ginkgo tree. The central image shows ginkgo leaves after they have turned yellow. The species received its name, Ginkgo biloba, because the fan-shaped leaves often have two lobes separated by a cleft. The image on the right shows a longitudinal section through the female gametophyte. Note that the embryo lies in the center of the cut gametophyte. The cycads are characterized by large, stiff leaves extending from a short, woody trunk. Cycad cones are often gigantic, as seen in the image to the right. Like ginkgos, cycads have motile sperm. There are two families of cycads. The Cycadaceae contains a single genus with about 105 species. The family Zamiaceae contains about 206 species in 9 genera. Cycads are often confused with palm trees, angiosperms that share many outward characteristics with cycads. However, there is at least 300 million years separating cycads and palms. Because they often grow in similar environments, their similar appearances are probably the result of parallel evolution. The worldwide distribution of cycads is shown in the figure. Note that the vast majority of extant cycads are found in the southern hemisphere. In contrast, conifers are largely northern hemisphere species. The Nettidae consist of 3 orders, each containing a single family. The distribution of each family is shown in the figure. The Ephedraceae has the widest range, while the Welwitschiaceae is found only in the Namibian desert. The Nettaceae are primarily found in the southern hemisphere. Shown are 3 representatives of the nettophytes. Ephedra distachea is an example of the Ephedraceae. Nadimnemon is a representative of the Nettaceae, while Welwitschia mirabilis is the sole member of the Welwitschiaceae. You probably noticed that these nettophytes look more similar to flowering plants than they do to other gymnosperms, especially the conifers and the cycads. Of note, nettophytes have vessel elements like angiosperms. Not surprisingly, the relationship of the nettophytes to the other seed plants has traditionally been a subject of considerable debate. The anthophyte hypothesis, which was derived primarily from morphological data, suggests that the nettophytes are a sister clade to the angiosperms. However, genomic studies suggest that the nettophytes may be more closely allied with conifers and that the similar features of nettophytes and angiosperms arose independently. This theory, known as the nettifer hypothesis, keeps the gymnosperms in a monophyletic group. Other genetic studies have suggested that nettophytes may be more closely allied with the Pinaceae than are other conifers. This Nepine hypothesis has gained some momentum, but is hard to reconcile with morphological evidence. Finally, some have suggested that nettophytes are sister to all other seed plant lineages. This is the nettophyte sister hypothesis. Of these different hypotheses, the anthophyte hypothesis, which was a predominant variant throughout most of the 20th century, has been largely discredited by the molecular evidence. The nettifer hypothesis is probably the best supported model at present, followed by the Nepine hypothesis. The nettophyte sister hypothesis has little support. In summary, the gymnosperms comprise 4 of the 5 subclasses of seed plants. The conifers, Pinidae, are more diverse than many realize. There are 6 conifer families, of which only 1 has been explored in any depth. Little is known about the genomes of the non-conifer gymnosperms, the Ginkgoaceae, the Nettaceae, and the Cycadaceae. So, the good news is there are lots of wonderful gymnosperms left to explore.